everyone. My name is Babies, and today we are going to talk about something we encounter daily on our phones, on TVs, and also on the social media, but it's rarely talked or examined critically. What we know as fashion journalism. Today, I'm not going to talk about any celebrity gossip or not about what any celebrity wore, but we are going to talk about a real work of documenting, interpreting, and sometimes holding accountable the fashion industry. So, as a fashion consultant who has worked with lots of Ghanaian designers, brands, and also editorial teams, I have seen how journalism who who has shapes what we wear, who we celebrate, and what we believe as beauty, status, and also cultural value. This presentation will give you the tools to read fashion coverage in a way a journalist writes it, with curiosity, skepticism, and also a deep awareness of our Ghanaian context. So let's start with a provocation. If I ask you to name a Ghanaian fashion journalist, many people might say Matankuma or Nanama Ajiman. But let me remind you, they are just celebrities who occasionally, not always, talk fashion. Others also think of Instagram influencers doing the OOTD post. So the real question here is fashion journalism just shopping news with good photography? The answer I can assure is a very firm no. Here in Ghana, fashion journalism is a cultural documentation. It archives what we valued at a specific time, like the return of the smoke weaving in the 1990s or the global embrace of the kente in 2020. It also inaugurates it also critiques power, who gets funded by the Minister of Tourism or who gets invited to the presidential inaugurations to dress dignitaries, who gets erased from our fashion industry. And also it investigates labor conditions in the Cantonmanto market, the environmental cost of imported second-hand clothing, or whether a made in Ghana label is authentic or just marketing. So when you understand fashion journalism here, you understand how Ghana culture is manufactured and who holds the pen. So what then is fashion journalism? Let's define this clearly in our context. Fashion journalism is the practice of gathering, verifying, and presenting information about the fashion industry to a Ghanaian or the global public. And it has three functions. We have reporting, commentary, and also investigation. What is reporting? Reporting is talks about who designed the Independence Day collection, for example. Which Ghanaian brand is open which Ghanaian brand just opened a flagship store in London? Which textile factory in Akosombo is shutting down? This talks about who, what, when, where of our industry, of the fashion industry. Then the commentary. What does a collection inspired by the year of return actually say about diaspora relations? Also, is the new Afrocentric design authentic or appropriate? Great commentary just don't praise, it critiques with historical and cultural knowledge. And the last one is investigate. Is that brand actually using local weavers or importing from China and labeling it as Ghanaian or made in Ghana? Are the seamstresses in Tema being paid minimum wage? Investigation is where fashion journalism acts as a watchdog. Great journalism does all three at once. It does not just repeat press release from designers, it interrogates them. And it does not just celebrate our culture, it also questions who benefits from that celebration. The next one is the four pillars of fashion journalism. Every piece of fashion journalism falls into one of four categories. You have the So understanding this will change how you read every article you see in Ghanaian Times, Daily Graphic, or outline platforms like Star Wave or Fashion Ghana. The first pillar is news and business. This covers brand expansions, government policies, and economic shifts. Example is when Ghana Export Promotion Authority announced tax breaks for locally manufactured textiles. That was business news. It tells you where money is flowing and which designers are getting government backing. Then criticism and reviews. This is the review of runway collections of Accra Fashion Week, Lagos Fashion Week, or even a university graduate show in, let's say, Winneba. So critics don't just say I love it. They analyze fabric choices, stitching quality, silhouettes, cultural references, and whether the collection moves Ghana fashion forward or just repeat what we've already seen, what we always see. The third is pictures and profiles. Long form storytelling about designers like Kofi Ansar, Christy Browns, or Aisha Obuobi. Think of a 2000 word piece on how Kente weavers in Bonre are adapting their craft for modern bridal wear. It's narrative, it's emotional, it's deeply researched. The last one is investigate. The most important pillar today in Ghana is investigation. Investigation into counterfeit Ghanaian labels, exploitation of apprentices in tailor shops, or the environmental destruction caused by textile dyeing in local water bodies. Without this pillar, our industry has no accountability. Moving on, then versus now Ghanaian timeline. So in the 1950s and 60s, fashion coverage in Ghana was limited to colonial era newspapers like the Gold Coast Times. Coverage Coverage also focused on what high society wore to state functions, often British style gowns. Ghanaian textiles like kente were mentioned as only as native dress, not as high fashion. So in the 1970s and 80s, after independence, there was a cultural renaissance. Newspapers began featuring Ghanaian designers like Kofi Ansah, who studied abroad but returned to champion local fabrics. Journalism started to treat Ghana fashion as serious, not exotic. In the 1990s, the rise of private media, the Independent, the Mirror, gave space to fashion columns. Writers like Akosia Aberese began profiling local designers and covering Africa's first commercial fashion show, but it was still a niche, mostly in weekend supplements. The 2000s were the disruption. Blogs like Fashion Ghana, Ghana Celebs, and later Instagram pages growing as time goes on. Creators who write deep add free analysis of the industry for paying subscribers, both local and international. So, what are we taking away? The key takeaway is a great fashion journalist today must be multi platform. You cannot just write for print or just for writing space. You must also create a video content, host Twitter spaces, engage in Instagram comments, and sometimes even go live from Kantamanto. The media now is part of the message. So, what makes a great fashion journalist or a great Ghanaian fashion journalist? Not everyone who talks about what to wear to a wedding is a journalist. No. A great fashion journalist possesses four distinct competences. One, we have the visual literacy. They can read a garment. They can tell if a creative piece is authentic, not by touching, but just by looking at it. Hand woven in Bonre or mass printed in China. They also notice if a seam is crooked, if the dye is bleeding, if a silhouette is referencing to a 1960 Ghanaian independence gown or a 1990s American rap video. They don't just describe, they decode. Industry fluency. They understand the business. They know what goes in and out, the ins, the outs of the business. They know the difference between visco and accostumbo textiles. They know who supplies which designers, which brands are exporting to Europe, and how the used clothing trade affects local production. This also allows them to report with the authority, not guess what work or just guessing. Then cultural reader, the third one. They connect fashion to Ghanaian politics, music, and also social movement. They understand that the resurgence of smog, that's the fugu in the 2020s, isn't just a trend. It's a statement about Nordic Ghana identity and pride. They see fashion as a mirror of our time. Fourth, ethics. They distinguish between a gifted styled look and honest review. They disclose if they were paid to cover a show. They don't let advertising from a particular brand soften their critic. Without critics, they are not journalists. They are influencers with a title. So if you are not able to critique a particular brand just because you've been paid, you are not a fashion journalist. You are just a critic or an influencer with a title. So what are the questions every Ghanaian fashion story must answer? There are five. So whenever you read a Ghanaian fashion article or a fashion article, whether it's about 80 December looks or a designer's new line, run through these five questions. If it is able to answer, if that article is able to answer them all, then that journalism or that article is complete. If not, it's incomplete. So number one, the first question you should ask is who made it? Not the designer's name, but the actual hands that sewed it. Which seamstress in Abri, which tailor in Kumasi, under what conditions were apprentice paid or just fed line. So he asks who made it, not the designer's name, like in the person who designed or the person or the brand name. You have to ask, get to know the specific person who made it, whether by hand, whether it was sold, whether the person is in Kumasi, whether the tailor is in Ebri, or whether it was apprentices who sold. Were they paid or they were just fed lunch or they had nothing at all? The question is why now? Why is this collection launching today? Is it time to the Homoho Festival? Or is it responding to the Year of Return Tourism Boom? What cultural or economic movement enabled it? So you have to ask why now? Why are we creating specific designs now? Is it because Homoho is around the corner or is it because of Dirty December? So you have to ask that question. What does it say about its time? Does this collection reflect optimism about Ghana's economy, anxiety about cultural laws, rebellion against Western standards of beauty? Great journalism also places fashion within the border of Ghanaian. So you have to also ask yourself, what does it say about in its time? Is this design about or is it fashion about or symbolizing COVID? Or is it talking about our cultural laws? Or is it a rebellion against the Western standard of beauty? So you have to ask that question. Who wears it and who doesn't? Is this collection only for wealthy Accra elites? Or is it accessible to market women in KJTR? Who is included in the campaign image and who is absent? This question exposes class and cultural gatekeeping. So you have to ask who wears this, who and who doesn't. So is this designed for our man without that commercial reality is just another press release. So a case study, uh, the Cantonment to second-hand clothing report. This is one of the most powerful Ghanaian fashion journalism example in recent years. In 2023, several Ghanaian international journalists collaborated on investigation into Kantamanto market, the largest second-hand clothing market in West Africa. Initially, coverage was surface level, Kantamanto, a shopper's paradise, but investigative journalists went deeper. They tracked the origin of the used clothing, shipping containers from UK and US. They discovered that 40% of what arrives in Ghana is unsellable rags, diaspora communities wearing kente. So journalism is not a luxury. It's the industry's member. What we did well, what we failed at, what we lost, and what we claim. It's a mirror reflecting back our beauty, but also our inequalities of class, religion, region, and also gender. So when you understand fashion journalism here, you understand how our national identity is created, how Ghanaianness is packaged, sold, and sometimes explained. This is what I hope you take away today. Thank you. And please, if you have any question or suggestion, please drop it in the comment section. See you next time. Thank you.